Hey everybody, and welcome to another amazing episode of Finding Peaks. Yours truly, President and Founder Chris Burns. I got my grateful, recovering co-host, Jason Friesma, Chief Clinical Officer. Welcome to the show, Jay.
Good to be here.
Welcome.
Grateful to have you. We got a bunch of chiefs and directors in the house today. We have Aaron Grenny, our admissions director. Phenomenal professional, but even better human. Let's go. And the man behind the mystery, this is Joseph Villanueva. He is our Chief Growth Officer here at Peaks Recovery, and he and his wife and a couple other folks, Coover, are responsible for putting out all of this material, all of the multimedia, all the business and growth and development Joseph and his team are responsible for, and we just couldn't be more honored to have him on the show. He supports Peaks just as much or more than anybody else. Big heart for this work. And another person in active recovery. So today is my birthday episode. I'm celebrating 14 years of recovery. What I like to say about that is...
Should we clap?
Yeah. And really what it's been for me is it's been an opportunity to not cope with substances for a tremendous amount of time. And I'm really, really grateful for that. But I wanted to bring up in this show and talk about just the recovery process in 2022, differently than even when I got here 14 years ago in 2008. And I've talked about this a lot on the show, and I think it's really important to bring up is, you know, in 2008, when treatment programs were providing young people aftercare plans, it really was kind of a sticky note opportunity. It was a 90/90, find a therapist, good luck, but you're better off getting into a 12-step group to help build a community. And so that's what I did. I had a really awesome process in the early stages of Alcoholics Anonymous, but I was met with a tremendous amount of hard edges early on. And the hard edges didn't matter as much to me because what the 12-step group did for me was it was a family of choice that I had never had. And so I really wanted to be a part of this family. And they wanted me to be a part of it, and that felt really good because I hadn't felt like I had been a part of anything for a long time. So I was willing to do whatever these men suggested. You know, one of the sayings in AA is, if somebody has what you want, you'll do what they do, right? If you want what they have, you're willing to do what they do. And my first sponsor sat down with me at 90 days sober, and I was using an anti-craving medication called Suboxone. And I sat down with my first sponsor, and he said, my second sponsor, excuse me, my first sponsor, and he said, if you're on Suboxone, you're not sober. And that is one of the most widely used drugs today for opiate use and early stages of recovery, and we're finding a tremendous amount of efficacy for that drug up and into 2, 3, 4, 5 years of recovery. But yet I was fed kind of a different message, and my fear is that our young people and our mature people are still getting fed a message that's incongruent to where we are at today in 2022 with all of the resources that we have. And so I wanted to bring you all on the show because each and every one of you has an individualized approach to your authentic process. And I just want to touch base on kind of your early experience. We talked about it a little bit before the show, how it kind of feels very small to start, but if we're going to have really long-standing and sustainable recovery, we have to open that up and create some broadness about it. And so I want to check in with you first, Aaron, because we both found recovery in a small town in northern Arizona where there's more treatment centers per capita than anywhere else in the world. More AA meetings per capita than anywhere else in the United States, last I checked. And so the 12-step culture there, if you didn't want to get into 12-step, you probably didn't have a lot of friends. And so I just want to talk about your experience in the early stages, what the 12-step meant to you, and maybe where you're at today with respect to your longer-term recovery, and how that matters as a professional.
Yeah. So definitely when I first went into this small town in northern Arizona, it was essentially the foundation of getting sober. There was some clinical approach, but I say this often. I was I didn't do much therapy really at all. There were some groups that were helpful, but really at its core, the 12 steps was clearly the basis of how you got sober. And there was this large community of people who all knew each other, everyone was friends, everyone helped each other, and I certainly had that same thought going into it, like I really want to be included in this, I want to be the cool person and get my chips like everybody else. And it honestly, it was really great. It helped me so much because there was this built-in group of people who knew what I had experienced and who didn't judge my past mistakes, and that was huge for me to feel so immediately accepted by such a large group of people who kind of shared this commonality. And so really for the first probably at least 12 months, 2 years, 3 years, but certainly while I was in this town, it was ingrained in everything in my life, and the sayings and the steps and all of these things were absolutely at its core what kind of ran my life. And I actually remember thinking at a certain point, I was like, I feel like I'm running. I feel like I am trying to sprint as fast and as far away as I can from this past experience and this person that I was. And I was probably a couple years in, I was like, I'm a little bit tired. I'm kind of tired of trying to cover all these things all the time. Like, oh, don't forget to go to meetings, and don't forget to turn yourself over, and like all these things. And I was like, what I really want, and I know that this is a part of the program, is just a collective like peace. And I want to feel like I'm okay. And so at that point I kind of shifted a little bit from the foundation of what got me sober into what felt right to me. And that was having a community, continuing to go to therapy, and maintaining medications, honestly. And those are the things in my life today. I have 6 years sober, 7 next month.
Yeah.
And you don't have to laugh. Thank you. And so at this point, that's what I'm doing. Like I have the exact same friendships, a lot of the same friendships that I had at that time, and they will be in my life forever. I truly believe that. And that's the gift, I think, of the 12-step community, is this group of people that you really connect with. But I also go to therapy, and I also take medication. So it's been such a journey to watch it evolve, and I'm really grateful for everything I experienced throughout my process. But
Yeah, and I love that you said that too. That was really progressive. Like when I get my 7 years next month, you wouldn't say that because you're not guaranteed next month.
no,
But I actually believe in your heart of hearts that you're going to be sober next month.
yeah, I do.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is interesting. I love that. And that's kind of what I get through having this holistic view of recovery and having a full recovery one day at a time. I most certainly believe in the one day at a time.
Absolutely.
But I can tell you next week that I'm going to be sober.
Yes.
And I don't have to sell myself short on that. And so I think in a way, that early onset experience in Alcoholics Anonymous, it has a tremendous amount of efficacy to keeping you a little bit small. And I think it's in an effort to create humility, but it also detracts from opportunity. But I love how you said that, because you wouldn't have said that in a 12-step group. They'd be like, no.
That's very true.
Yeah, nothing, 14 years doesn't matter unless you get 14 years in a day.
Right. And there are those stories of people who get a long period of time and they relapse, and that's kind of what propels this internal fear. But at this point in my life, I feel resolved and peaceful and calm and confident in who I am in my recovery. So that feels great.
Yeah, that's absolutely a beautiful thing. I kind of had that experience in 12-step as well, as like I'm going to a meeting every day. But oftentimes the dialogue is often about substances and war stories and things like that. And so I found myself, even though I would let the meeting know that I was happy, joyous, and free, I found myself ruminating a lot on thoughts about substances and glorifying. It's because I really hadn't attended to the root.
Right.
And when I'm able to repair that root a little bit, to your point, I can have that longevity, and I can have that peace, and I can have that comfortability that you talk about. So thank you for that.
Yeah, of course.
I want to check in with Joseph too, because we were sitting down just a few weeks ago, and this is somebody who's been working with Peaks for a number of years, probably about 5 or 6, 5?
Somewhere around there, yeah, 5.
Yeah, and he's just developed a tremendous passion. I think it's always been there, but it's certainly been exacerbated since he started working with Peaks. And for somebody who doesn't work client-facing, I don't know if you'll find a more passionate and big-hearted individual for the people that we serve other than Joseph. And now I've had the opportunity to sit with him and meet with you on a weekly basis, or every couple weeks for a number of weeks now. And I was sitting with him the other day, and what brings this up for me is I've been married for 10 years, and my wife has, she's been to Survivor, she's been to Grief Week, she's been in a lot of therapy, she's done the 12 steps for adult child, she's done all this stuff, she's in biweekly therapy, but for whatever reason, throughout my recovery, I've always felt like she's been on the sideline because she wasn't a substance abuser. And I was sitting with Joseph a few weeks ago, and I was just watching kind of this growth happen in front of me, and I was like, man, you're in recovery. Because if you take a coping mechanism, a substance use disorder, and they cope, and then you take perfectionism or tuning my world out or isolationism.
This one's right.
That works. If the substance user lives to 90, they're in the same spot at the end of their life, anxious, all alone, depressed, and disconnected. And so I think we don't give enough praise to folks that are working on the sidelines to better themselves one day at a time. And I really believe this is all about mental health and has nothing to do with substances. So I want everybody in the world to come join this recovery party. And Joseph's one of them. And so I just want to check in with you, Joseph. It's like, what was that like to hear that you're actually a part of this thing, this really magical and beautiful thing that you love so much, that you're actually on the same team? It was almost like you like went, phew, and was like able to settle because it allowed you to be a part of something that I know that you love and value so much.
Yeah, so the conversation for me was pretty meaningful, to say the least, and it was a revelation that I think I'll carry with me really close to my heart for everything that we do and continue to do together as an organization and all the projects that I'm involved in, because I think I felt what you were talking about that your wife feels. Mm-hmm. Kind of on the sidelines, really good supporters, but it didn't quite feel right to place yourself on the sideline because part of you feels connected, doesn't know how to truly associate it. And for me in that conversation, you brought me to the revelation that unified us, mm-hmm. all of us. Mm-hmm. And that was really powerful for me because I saw how myself and everybody else that I come across in the staff and in the people that are in the program, clients, we're all eye to eye, we're on the same level, and we're all in recovery. And it brought me so much closer to the entire situation. And that was really powerful. I think we were talking about, I was sharing with you, for me the recovery is recovering from perfectionism, mm-hmm. And the way that I observed myself. And one thing that it seems like is a carrying thread, or a thread that goes through all these prior conversations that I've had. Mm-hmm. Aaron you shared some of your story with me, and then listening to Sylvan on a few episodes back, there's this moment of you arrive to the point where, I think Aaron, you said, I'm just tired mm-hmm. of Chris's terminology, white knuckling the situation. And I felt the same way. Mm-hmm. I was so critical and hard on myself, and I was never enough and always reaching and then tired. And that was my moment of like, all right, let me look for a book that mm-hmm. can probably help me. Mm-hmm. And then that led me to conversations with people like Chris mm-hmm. and to therapy. And you transition from that rigidity, mm-hmm. something that can keep you on a path, but very rigid. I think Sylvan was using that word, and I really liked that. He was like, AA can be really good for that rigidity mm-hmm. that a lot of people need, and he admitted to it. I think I needed that. Mm-hmm. But then you get to that point where you transition and you need something more, mm-hmm. enter in treatment. Mm-hmm. And I was like, man, such a cool balance how they can be hand in hand. I think I started learning the values of something like AA and how that can get you to a certain checkpoint. Mm-hmm. And then you inevitably need to walk into a program that has the capabilities of really wrapping themselves around you, like Peaks, and what people like Jason do, and like the organization as a whole really can provide is something much beyond that rigidity. So full stop.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful, man, and really well explained. And I want to be able today for anybody to see themselves in my story. So I don't want to talk about, for me, Chris Burns, like it's the last year I'm talking about sobriety time. This is it. Because I want Jason to see himself in my story. He can't see himself in my sobriety story, right? He can see himself in my mental health story, my trauma survivor story, my adult child, all of the stuff. And I want to make sure that each and every person that is thinking about picking up the phone to call Peaks, that I can sit down with them and they can find themselves in my story. And I think for so many years, 1935 and on, and 12 Steps has been such a great thing for this world. But I think it's detracted a little bit from the opportunity we have to bring more people into this space. And I really want to just continue to broaden our horizons, broaden the conversation, and ask others like Jason, like, how do you feel hearing this type of stuff? Because you're someone who, quite frankly, man, was in recovery before me,
Chris, one of my favorite stories you tell is you and I met at a restaurant like 2 blocks from here with Bobby and then somebody else. And like you told me, I think just last year that like you guys were like,
how much time does he have?
Yeah, how much time does he have? And I think you were like 10 years from heroin or something like that. I don't remember.
Bobby's like, nah, 20 alcohol for sure. I'm like, oh.
Like this guy is on the edge.
Yeah, this is like 15 years ago, man.
Yeah, to be clear, I've never done
he's never had an
heroin. I
addiction.
just want to be clear about that. But I think as you guys were talking, I just I think about the amount of work we do. And actually, a long time ago when I was working with adolescents and even young adults, when we were a young adult program, I actually used to tell parents this when we just worked with young adults, and we worked with them for like 4 to 6 months. I'm like, you're going to bring in an immature 22-year-old, and then if they go through our program and do all the examining of their life, they're going to be more mature than their cohort. Mm-hmm. Because it is a gift to do that examining of one's life. And, for me personally, I certainly started as a counselor before I started any sort of counseling. I was that guy. This was a long time ago, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Back when I was working under Freud, but no, I'm kidding. But in all seriousness, like I had some life events occur, some around the health of my son, that just actually had a nice effect, a really horrible effect of like bringing up things from my childhood that I hadn't thought about in a long time, and I didn't realize how they were affecting me to the day. And so I had to do somatic experience work, and I actually got with a group of guys every week, and did that examining of my own life and kind of breaking the link from how the past was affecting my present. And I think it was with that work that I think I finally was able to get to where I am today and be able to sit and be present with people and hold that space and not be run by anger or other emotions and that sort of thing. And I think to Aaron's point too, like it did take community. It wasn't an AA community. Mm-hmm. I've been a counselor since 1999, and I used to get asked a lot, it doesn't happen at all really anymore, but like, why do you work so much with addictions? Because I always just found that that's where I was most comfortable. And, because similar, like people would think like, oh, you're in recovery from something. And I'm like, bro, like I'm as normie as it comes pretty much. But like, but I can relate to the pain and the depravity of it. And I think what always drew me to it is like, people who are kind of at their bottom with addiction, man, they know that they could die at any moment. Yeah. And it takes a long time for people with depression or other mental health issues. Like you can endure a lot of suffering for a long time with substances or just with mental health or with both. There's something about that just feels really pretty appealing to me.
Yeah, I love that, man. And it's, as you were talking, I'm actually leaning towards, before I got to Colorado, I was 6 years in AA. Then I came here and I met you.
Yeah.
And you showed me the mountains. And then after a few years of doing the mountains, you were like, here's a phone number. Call this person. I think it's going to be kind of crazy therapy, but I think you're ready for it.
Yeah.
And you threw me that. And so, the backside of my recovery, which I would assume for me is the most vulnerable and the most authentic, came as a suggestion from somebody who's never been substance driven.
Yeah.
That's recovery, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I want the viewers to see today is like, it comes in all different shapes and sizes. And I remember being a young person and being like, I'm not sitting in that group for the rest of my life. I can't do it. This just in, you will grow up and out of wherever you start. You'll have an authentic opportunity to be in the top 1% relationally, spiritually, mentally and emotionally. And that creates such fulfillment, especially for young people. And it's interesting what you said too, is they're going to come in here really immature, but then they're probably going to be much more mature than their cohort or other people that are in the similar age range. It's so true.
Right.
And it's scary too,
Yeah.
you know, to grow up and out of that. Now my friends are in college, but there's just a tremendous amount of hope in 2022 that I really didn't want to miss in my birthday celebration. And I want to turn it back over to you, Aaron, just to say, what would you like to say to the person that's like pre-contemplative or contemplated or has that phone in their hand and is just like, I don't want to do this because I'm scared to death that I'm going to have this hard edge or not be a part of or be left out? I mean, what can you say to that person who's got the phone in their hand right now that can just give them just a little bit of hope?
Well, as we've been talking about this, I've been thinking that, and I'm sure I'm sure we've all experienced this, where it's so easy to identify how you're different and how you don't fit within XYZ. I think even within AA and within recovery situations, you're kind of looking for differences. And that's the thing about what I love about Peaks is it truly is individualized. And like it truly is like based on what this person needs and what commonalities do we have collectively as humans, collectively as people within Peaks and the organization. So I think what I would say is just despite whatever you're telling yourself, you're not so different that we can't find commonality, and that like there are people there who will not judge you and who will support you despite whatever you think about yourself. We don't have that, and there's definitely hope, and it can get better. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much for that, Aaron. I appreciate it. Joseph, what would you like to leave? You know, kind of the culture of the show is really the opportunity for recovery, community-based resources in 2022, and the hope that is recovery today. I mean, what would you like to say to those people who are pre-contemplative or contemplative and have the phone in their hand or just, you know, filled with a tremendous amount of fear and anxiety and shame? Because I know we've all been in that position. So what would you say to that individual?
Man, I guess that trying matters. You know, it's not about if every attempt that I've made in anything in my life, this is going to be full effort try. And a lot of them don't work out, but you know, you learn a lot from that and you grow. So, you know, growth is a word that I've been embodying. I'm trying to, you know, place in every almost day of my life. And I think that the growth that you get from trying is something, and that trying means a lot. So take the try for sure. And
that's huge.
I love that.
You know, and I used to say this bull crap phrase that I got from AA that says trying is dying. And you actually reminded me right there that I'm done saying that, because it's actually so important. And for us to show up, right, and we do one thing perfect, we just don't do this substance thing, but if you're anything like me in your first year, you're struggling with dishonesty, you're struggling with integrity, you're struggling with relationships, you're struggling with treating people poorly, but I got this one thing, you know, but I'm not trying in a lot of other areas.
Yeah.
So you actually bring up a really good point for me, and I'm going to quit saying that, because trying matters a lot. And I used to say, you're either doing it or you don't. What a hard edge, huh?
Well, especially if you've tried over and over and over, and then you feel like, what is the point? I keep trying and it's not working. No, it does matter. Keep
Yeah.
trying. I
Yeah.
love that.
No, that's great, man. Thank you for that, for sure. Jason, last but not least, what are we going to send the viewers off with? What is the message we want to get across for the vulnerable person who's suffering with a mental health disorder, substance or not?
Man, I love that you just said the word suffering, because that's what I was thinking about. And we were just talking about this in the meeting earlier today too, that suffering can be so difficult. It is where we all have these stories of suffering, but overcoming suffering can be such a great opportunity. But I was talking about in our meetings this morning too, that like sometimes our suffering can cause us to get bitter and wall ourselves off. And I guess what I would have to say is you don't have to live this way. Like it can be different, and there can be a path, and you're not alone. Those would be the things I would say.
I love that. Well, thank you all for coming on my birthday episode. We'll do it each year. We're not going to talk about sobriety time, but we'll just do mental health awareness.
Yeah.
I am grateful for the men and women in the 12-step group, a Crazy Birds group, Alcoholics Anonymous in Prescott, Arizona. Those were one of the first
5 a.m.
5 a.m.
Watch out for the javelinas.
Yeah, watch out for the javelinas. Shout out to them. Those men and women showed me a tremendous amount of love when I couldn't show it for myself. So really grateful for them. Grateful for all of you and what you guys have meant to my recovery. So thank you all so much. Until next year.
Well, before like we leave, I just want to like commend you on that 14 years. Not that the numbers mean a lot, but every day that I get to observe and just know you, you make it look so easy, and it's definitely a role model for several people. And I know a lot of people look up to you in the way that you navigate through life, Chris. So I mean, 14 years, I hope you really feel the congratulations on my behalf and the people that I know. We talk about, man, Chris got 14 years, that's awesome. And he's out here living his best life and doing so many leadership-based things that I don't know if you get the recognition all the time, but I certainly appreciate the example you set forth. So thank you for 14 years.
Thank you, man. That means a lot.
Absolutely.
And the vast amount of people who you have made a difference in their life because of your recovery. I mean, we can't even count it. It goes on forever.
Means a lot.
It's really incredible.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. Recovery is amazing, man. I was at Lake Ann yesterday, and I got to come down and do IOP, and I am just like, the life that I get to live today with you all, a part of it, is very, very special, and I'm very lucky. So thank you guys very much for coming on. I appreciate it. You know where to find us. This Sunday at 6 p.m., podcast, Instagram, TikTok, Spotify, Apple Music, who knows? Check us out, man. I've been pointing a lot of people to the show. We're getting a lot of viewers. We would love to have you on this Sunday at 6 p.m. Until next time, peace.